Welcome to another edition of Songs That Go Together Well. I'm the Beatlemeister, master of the Beatleverse. In this episode, I'll be talking about three of the most important Beatles songs. John Lennon's Psychedelic Trilogy. The Beatles have a lot of psychedelic songs, but in the Beatles, nobody did psychedelia like John Lennon. And the trilogy of songs we are talking about are three of the most innovative, complex, and thought-provoking songs in all of Beatles canon. Tomorrow Never Knows, Strawberry Fields Forever, and I Am The Walrus. Chronological is Beatological, so let's start with Tomorrow Never Knows. The first song recorded for the Revolver sessions in 1966. To give you an idea of how much of a songwriting progression Tomorrow Never Knows is, the last time the Beatles were in the studio before recording Tomorrow Never Knows was November 11th, 1965, when they recorded You Won't See Me and Girl and added overdubs to Wait. All great songs, but with Tomorrow Never Knows, recorded 7 months later on April 6, 1966, the Beatles took the great leap forward. After recording this song, nothing would be the same with the Beatles in the studio, much like taking hallucinogenic drugs. Once you do LSD or magic mushrooms, nothing is the same again, or so they say. By this time in 1966, John Lennon and George Harrison were tripping on acid daily. John was especially fond of LSD and wanted to write a song that captured the psychedelic experience. So John brought in a song that was centered on a droning C chord, with lyrics inspired by a book co-written by counterculture guru Timothy Leary. The book was titled The Psychedelic Experience, a manual based on the Tibetan Book of the Dead. To achieve this musical version of an acid trip, John insisted on having his vocals sound like the Dalai Lama shouting from the mountaintops. The acid takes effect immediately as George Harrison comes in aggressively with a droning tambura. Then, with even more aggression, Ringo's heavy, hypnotic drums along with Paul's thumping bass line overpower you with drug-induced goodness. Then come the tape loops, the high pitch of what sounds like seagulls, but not seagulls, because in psychedelia, nothing is real. Then, John takes center stage, commanding us to turn off your mind, relax, and float downstream. And so we do. We have no choice, because during a psychedelic trip, we have no control of what we are going to see, hear, and feel. Tape loops, strange sounds, backwards guitars, and ancient Eastern instruments speed us along an aural experience unlike anything ever heard before. Tomorrow Never Knows is both electronic and organic, like looking at nature and realizing all the curves are hard-edged and pixelated. This song turned the studio into another instrument the Beatles could use in the making of their music. No sound was impossible now. Strawberry Fields Forever, the first song recorded for the Sgt. Pepper sessions. John wrote Strawberry Fields Forever while filming How I Won the War in Spain. The song starts slowly with a mellotron that sounds like flutes played by Paul. John comes in like a dream. Ringo kicks in with one of his best performances ever. Lyrically, John gets to it right away, singing, "Let me take you down, 'cause I'm going to Strawberry Fields. Nothing is real." This is a more personal lyric than Tomorrow Never Knows, but also more enigmatic. We don't really know what John is talking about, but we know it's partly inspired by John's childhood memories of Strawberry Field, a garden belonging to a Salvation Army children's home in Liverpool. We get more backwards instruments, this time what sounds like cymbals and percussion. George introduces us to the beautiful sound of the Swarmandal, or Indian harp, and we get the full effect of producer George Martin's scoring superpowers. Strawberry Fields Forever should probably be credited to Lennon, McCartney, and Martin, because a large part of what makes this song great and important in the Beatles canon is George Martin's score. His arrangement of cellos and brass are as iconic as anything else in the song. And speaking of iconic, Ringo's drumming. It sounds ridiculous to say, but Ringo really is the most underrated drummer in rock history. Only Ringo can make a bare-bones drum kit sound like a symphony played by an army marching to war. And that's exactly what he does in this song, and especially so in the outro. Famously, this song was Frankenstein by stitching two versions together. Another example of how the Beatles used the studio as an instrument to create their masterpieces. Strawberry Fields Forever was released in February of 1967 as a double A-side single along with Penny Lane. Videos were filmed for each song, and we can see that we are in a new Beatles era. Out are the mop tops and cool matching suits. In is unkempt hair, Victorian-era mustaches, John's iconic granny glasses, and out of control, completely uncoordinated, hippy-dippy fashion. Look at the Beatles here in the last shot of the Strawberry Fields video. They're dressed like clowns. Psychedelia has absolutely taken over everything in 1967. Which leads us to Magical Mystery Tour and Song 3 in John's Psychedelic Trilogy, I Am The Walrus. Tomorrow Never Knows is about the aggressive drone, the message, and the explosion of sound. Strawberry Fields Forever is about melody and the whimsical nature of childhood nostalgia, juxtaposed with heavy orchestrations and unreal percussion. I Am The Walrus is all about the lyrics.
I am he as you are, he as you are, me and we are all together.
I Am The Walrus is John Lennon's most famous nonsense song. It's Lewis Carroll's Jabberwocky on acid. John Lennon learned that the lyrics to Beatles songs were being taught in schools, and that pretentious academics were wasting their time trying to analyze and decipher his silly words. This inspired the troll in him, and so he wrote the lyrics to I Am The Walrus as a goof. He purposefully wrote wild and meaningless lyrics to fool academics for centuries to come, and he succeeded brilliantly. I Am The Walrus is also the first time the Beatles get meta in the lyrics. At least I think that's true. John refers to another psychedelic track that was also heavily scrutinized for its lyrics. See how they fly like Lucy in the sky, see how they run. The line, see how they run, was then referenced by Paul McCartney in Lady Madonna, and Lady Madonna was then referenced by John Lennon in Glass Onion. The music in I Am The Walrus builds on the experience from the previous two songs. We get more of George Martin's genius score and arrangements. For the first time, a choir is brought in to sing on a Beatles track. And for the first time, we hear female voices. The Mike Sam Singers was a choir of professional studio vocalists who were brought in to sing nonsense lines. The Mike Sam Singers also appear on two other Beatles tracks, Good Night and The Long and Winding Road. Like Strawberry Fields, we get another fascinating outro. This time a chaotic, never-ending crescendo that includes the orchestra, the choir, sound effects, and live radio broadcasting. And it's here, near the end, that we get the famous lines from the BBC broadcast of Shakespeare's King Lear, Act 4, Scene 6. John Lennon is the fiddler on the knob, and he lands upon a scene where a character is murdered.
I am death.
Death first makes an appearance in the lyrics of Tomorrow Never Knows. It is not dying, surrendered to the void, that ignorance and hate they mourn the dead. In Strawberry Fields Forever, John does not mention death in the lyrics whatsoever. However, in the dying embers of the coda, John can be heard saying, I buried Paul. This, of course, was a revelation, an admission by the Beatles on record that Paul McCartney had indeed died in 1966. But we all know that's not what John is actually saying. What he's actually saying is, I buried Paul in cranberry sauce. Death returns for a third time in I Am The Walrus. First, we have the lyrics. See how they run like pigs from a gun, yellow matter custard dripping from a dead dog's eye. And the lines from King Lear. Thou hast slain me, bury my body, serviceable villain. Oh, untimely death. What is he dead? Sit you down, father, rest you. All three songs definitely have the heavy aura of death lurking in the shadows, which of course is a very psychedelic experience. There is a fourth song to this trilogy. Glass Onion is a song from the post-psychedelic period. It sounds very different from the Psychedelic Trilogy, stripped down to guitars, bass, and drums with a short, spooky orchestral punch at the end. Glass Onion is yet another meta-commentary on the Beatles' psychedelic period and on their lyrics. You know, the place where nothing is real. And it's also a low-key love letter to Paul McCartney. After all, the walrus was Paul. So, there you have it, John Lennon's Psychedelic Trilogy. 3 of the most important songs in the Beatles canon. In the next installment of Songs That Go Together Well, Paul's trio of music hall masterpieces. If you like and subscribe. Can you dig it?